Yeah, we are muted.
Let's try that again. This is why I should have pressed the button. I had the button set up to do this, but I thought I'd be clever. I wasn't clever. Hello, Boston Unity Group. Take two. Thank you very much for telling us it's muted. This is Chris, the one with too many buttons. I'm one of the organisers. We have Elliot and Graham here, who are the other two organisers. And we have Justin and Eric, who are our presenters tonight. As I was just explaining, if you have any questions, or if you want to let me know that I'm muted, please post in chat. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions about the talk, about Boston Unity Group, have any requests, I'm not going to tap dance tonight, sorry. Just type it into chat. We'd like to hear. Do we have any announcements, community-wise? I know there are some really good events coming up that I saw posted in the Boston Game Dev Slack, which I don't have in front of me right now.
Slack.bostongamedev.com. Let me throw that in the chat.
That's a good one. There were a couple of good events. There was, let me see.
The Northeastern Lecture Series.
That's right.
Looks like Emily Short's going to talk about AI-supported game narratives on April 1st. Bonnie Ruberg is going to talk about career games avant-garde on April 8th. And then Cecilia D'Anastasio is going to talk about something. Doesn't say. But that'll be on April 15th. So definitely check those out. I've been acquaintances with Emily for a while in the industry. She's an extremely talented AI engineer. Definitely go see that one.
Excellent. More details are
in
Slack if you need to join from that.
Mm-hmm.
Carry on.
Yeah, I'm seeing that Seth Altern is going to be presenting too on game tech. Where is it? Game tech and research simulation platforms for Boston Postmortem on the 13th. Seth's always an amazingly entertaining person to watch. Lots of good info. I'll drop that meetup in this channel too.
Perfect. I don't know if there are any other events. Can anyone think of any? I think.
PAX East? Well, no.
No PAX East. No, sadly.
It's the right decision, so we can't really be upset. But
yeah, it's a shame, but well, we live to play another day. So yeah, if we don't have anything else, I think we could.
Hey, I launched a game.
You did launch a game. I forgot about that. Congratulations to Graham.
Thank you. It's out on Apple Arcade right now. It's called Cozy Grove. Been working on it for 2 years with 22 people at Spry Fox. It's basically like Animal Crossing with way more story and way less buying stuff. It's coming to Steam and Epic and Xbox and PS4 and Switch on April 8th. So I don't know if you can see these bags under my eyes, but turns out launching a game on like 12 platforms is hard. So
I just say congratulations then.
Sure, thanks.
You're welcome.
Congratulations indeed. Oh, that's fantastic. It's really cool. I always get excited whenever I see someone in the community launch a game. It's like, this is great. Okay. I guess we should hand it over to Justin and Eric from Sonic Bloom, here to talk about adaptive audio.
Yeah.
Nice to have you here. Greetings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Let me get to screen sharing.
Woo.
Everything good?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. So we can start. All right. Cool. Eric, do you want to?
Yeah, we'll kick it off. I apologize in advance for the little square in the top right corner. That's part of the business here with Zoom and everything, but we'll do our best. All right, so welcome to Make It Cinematic, adapting gameplay to adaptive music. In this talk, we're really going to be kind of digging into what makes games cinematic and potentially what makes games less cinematic than we might expect or want. And kind of our take on this is that games have effectively been moving towards a more cinematic experience over the last 15 or more years. And there's a lot of potential still left for games to make advances in that space. And we think that audio is really the place for that to happen. And in this talk, we're going to try to make a case for that and show you some examples of like a demo that has this stuff kind of working, the theory that we're going out with. Anyway, let's dive in. Justin, if you want to advance. So I'm Eric.
And I'm Justin.
And we're the co-founders of Sonic Bloom, and our logo icon is the one over there on the right. And we have a lot of kind of music game blood in us and experience. We have experience at working with Harmonix, who did the Rock Band games and the early Guitar Hero games, Dance Central, as well as Innis, which is a music game company from Japan. It did Guitar Man, Elite Beat Agents, Lips, Black Eyed Peas Experience. We didn't necessarily work on all of those games, but that's kind of the pedigree of the studios that we've been a part of in the past. So we're going to try to tap into some of our experience with that level of music and game integration to kind of speak to what makes games cinematic, or what could make games more cinematic.
All right, so let's just dive into this. Basically, our whole hypothesis is there's a disconnect between music and action. And it's kind of best exhibited by showing you how movies do it and what we kind of are used to in action movies and what we see in games. So let's cue up the first video, and I want you to pay close attention to the score. Awesome. So obviously that was Indiana Jones. And what we're showing off there is like, obviously where we had close synchronization between the score done by John Williams, and when there was points of action that was accentuated or sort of, emphasized with the accompanying score. So now let's take a look at a game like Uncharted 4 that you could say emulates this game, this movie.
Okay. Jesus, did you have to pick on the most popular guy in this joint? I didn't hear you, Trigger. Guys, save it for later. Get the thing!
Cool. And I'm sure, as you saw, like I sort of highlighted in the video itself, the sort of things you should be paying attention to. But there's kind of this clear divide that doesn't exist between the two, even in AAA games that like are trying to emulate the score, the feeling, the cinematic quality of movies like Indiana Jones. There's like this gap that exists. I think that brings us to our next point.
Right. So why do we have this musical gap? What is really going on here? And, switching to the next slide, I think that a big chunk of what's going on here is that, games are used to these adaptive music systems, these adaptive audio systems. And what those are, for those who aren't familiar with the adaptive audio terms, those are systems with the idea is that the audio engine in the game is receiving signals and state and updates from the core game engine, and the audio mix changes as a result of that. So the music and the mix are responding to what's happening in the game. It's kind of messages go from the game into the audio system. But those adaptive music systems really have some kind of built-in inherent limitations and we're going to dive into some of those right now. The first one is, as you can see in this GIF here, that it can take hundreds of milliseconds for an audio system to respond musically to a game system event. So that means that, like, in this case, Wesley Crusher is the game system, and he's throwing the ball at this android, and it takes the android if that's the music, it's going to take a few milliseconds for the music to get to the next bar or the next phrase in the music where it makes sense to transition or to lift your hand up to catch the ball. And that can already be too late by the time that this happens. If you're trying to synchronize to some action in the game, it's already too late and you've missed it. The next item in the list is kind of, it's related to that. It's the inverse of that idea, which is that the audio system would need, in order to cope with that, the audio system would effectively need to time travel to know when to start transitioning to align with player input and visuals. So if you wanted the music system to do this thing where it does correctly land on time, somehow it would need to know, like, oh, okay, I know I have some in crazy insight into what the player is doing, and I know exactly how I'm going to do this. I'm going to anticipate it and make it work. So that is completely out of the question because no one has solved time travel yet. And then the other kind of issue that's somewhat related to this is that the more adaptive music gets, the more the game system, the game engine has to work at identifying what information to send to the game system and notify it, tell it, hey, here's something to be interested in. And then the more complex the handling of that has to become. So there's all of this kind of logic that needs to get built up in order to make, the music as adaptive as possible. It just gets exponentially more difficult the tighter you try to make that responsiveness. So really, how do we overcome all of this? How can we achieve the kind of ideal of that cinematic feel that we're looking for?
Yeah, and we have to think kind of about this and sort of pose some questions, which is, what if the game system could actually hear the music? What if we could actually, the game logic could actually adapt to what it hears and change the logic appropriately? What could a game system do if it actually had that information?
Right. And, the way we look at it is if we had that capability, if the game engine somehow knew, oh, I know what's going on in the music, I know what's coming up in the music, things that the game engine could do include delaying playback of animation to achieve music synchronization, so that if that, there's a big cymbal crash coming up in half a second, and I have a 300 millisecond animation, I'll just delay it 200 milliseconds and then that'll work. Speaking of, we are aware that delays of 20 to 30 to 200 milliseconds are common already in certain animation systems. You have them in transitions between states. Like if you're walking and you need to turn around and punch, there's going to be a mid-state transition where you have a lot of time that's being sunk into that, and you'll have flexibility in that speed to play with. And also that upwards of 150, 200 milliseconds generally are imperceptible for players. There are more perceptive players, but for the most part, that's something that is a tolerance that's acceptable. The game could also slow down animation, so to achieve that punch, and this one is very interesting because cinema already does this in many places. The movie 300, for instance, during a lot of the battles where they're showing off, glistening pecs and everything, that does a very good job of slowing down punches and kicks and stabs with whatever, it just really emphasizes moments in the combat with that exact mechanic, let's say. And doing this with, if the game knew, oh, I can just slow things down so that the punch lands in time, that could be a way to work around this problem. And finally, game systems that react to music don't have to send as much state to audio engines to achieve that music sync, right? They can keep it all internal and just handle it on their own. And transitioning state between two separate components of an engine is way more complicated and difficult than just keeping it in one location and dealing with it there. And that's kind of one of the ideas that we think has a lot of value in this approach, where let's say that the game somehow knew what the music was doing and what was going on in there. So we've talked a lot about what if we had this capability. Why don't we switch to showing you what this looks like in a game developed in Unity?
Yeah. So basically, we've been prototyping methods on our own to tackle this issue, because having this sort of cinematic feel in games is important to us. Also why we're here and talking about it. So we have 3 different methods that we want to show to you, and we'll show you in the videos coming up. The first method is the delay method, in which we would be delaying animation in order to align it to music. This is the 50 to 150 milliseconds of largely imperceptible time to move things over and align them. Method 2 is temporal slowdown, or slow-mo, however you want to call it, but it's aligning actions in the impact points to specific interesting points in the music to get this synchronization. And then method 3 is combining both methods for a more realistic game system. We know games generally do this, like if you play any modern Spider-Man or Batman, there's a bunch of games that will do this, but you'll see a lot of time fluctuation plus regular punches mixed in, and so the third method sort of emulates that. So let's move over to our video. All right, so let's pause it there. And so what you just saw was our single hit delay. You might have noticed a couple things, largely being that you would have heard the swing, you would have seen the swing come through, and you might have heard some sort of like musical accents on it that help you, hear it aligning with the audio. But it's really not that of a tangible effect, let's say. In the next clip, we're going to make it all the more obvious. We're going to do a bunch of swings and hits that are all timing themselves to the music, and it may become a lot more apparent what's actually happening as the animation and system that's trying to align to music becomes more syncopated and starts sounding like a beat. So let's see that. Cool. Yeah, pretty neat effect there, right? And obviously a lot more obvious. So in order to help understand this a bit, we have a bunch of built-in GUI to show what it is. What you'll see when it pops up is a timeline for the music. You'll see the waveform in it. You'll see these sort of lines that demark eighth notes. And the thing to pay attention to there is you'll see these bars pop up. The blue bar that you see is actually the amount of delay that's being introduced for the animation. So that's pause. And then you'll see another bar, which is the length of the animation. And you should be able to notice that it's aligning with beat points in the actual music timeline. So let's check that out. I don't know if that was obvious. It's kind of a lot to take in at once and kind of hard to observe. So what we'll do next is we're actually going to like exaggerate it a lot. We'll take our system and we will modify the actual delay time frame to wait a second before it will actually time the animation. So what you'll see is immediately a bar pop up. It's a blue bar, and that's showing the delay. That's essentially when the input comes in. The blue is the delay it's waiting for, and then the gray bar is the animation that's being queued up for actual synchronization. So let's check that out. So yeah, it's a pretty cool effect, right? And obviously the exaggeration is there just for example. I don't think anybody would play a game that has that much delay from input to reaction, but it shows you what it can do. And when it's tight, it actually, is almost imperceptible. You can sort of feel it a lot better when you're actually playing with controller, but we're presenting now. So the next video we'll show is the slow-mo, how we can slow down game time to stretch it out to find that next musical impact point and synchronize with it. The video you'll see is first a couple like single hits, and then which are being minorly delayed or minorly stretched out, and then you'll see some of the bigger hits come in that will kind of be more akin to what people are used to in modern day fighting games or combat games, where it stretches out a lot. So let's take a look at that. Hopefully your gears are turning and you're able to see how this might be useful in not just rhythm and music games or musical brawlers, but any type of game that has a need for like cinematic coordination with the soundtrack and sort of using the music to emphasize things. So the next clip we'll look at is looking at the overlay. So again, it's just like what we showed with the delay, but this is the slow-mo. So the yellow bar is what you'll see. That's how much we're going to stretch the animation by. You'll see the animation and it aligning with music time, and you'll kind of get a feeling for that.
The green bar is the one that stretches.
Green bar.
Yep.
Sure. Sorry. So again, it's happening pretty quick. In the way that we set the parameters on that is it's not meant to greatly exaggerate it. So you're seeing sort of quick slowdowns to shove the animation over to make it align with what you want. So again, we're gonna exaggerate it a lot, and we're gonna place it in a threshold between 1 second and 2 seconds, where the animation will wait or will delay. Will stretch out towards. So you get animations that will last about 1 second to 2 seconds. So let's check that out. Hopefully at this point in time, we have a feel for the two different methods that we can play with. And there's a third here, which is we can actually combine both of them to find optimal settings where sometimes delay makes sense, Sometimes a slow-mo attack makes sense. Combining the two to find the right one that makes sense contextually. And then, of course, we have like those power hits, which where you might have like a big wind-up swing to finish off an enemy. So the next clip we'll show will sort of combine both of those and go over like sort of the mix mode. You'll see the UI pop up, and I'll go over that as it starts playing. So cue up the next video. So you might be able to see in this UI overlay, we have both slow-mo and delay present, and we're setting parameters that make the most sense. So the 4 hits that you see in a combo all have their own settings. You can all set them to hit where you want, and you should be able to sort of see how it feels now as like a combo system. Or should I say, hear how it feels. All right, so we now have a pretty broad understanding about what we can do with music, especially when it's giving information back to the system. The logic system is responding to it. So the next video we'll show will be stripped of everything that we've just showed you. Like, this is what normal games are like when you're going ahead and playing it. Just to give a sort of juxtaposition of what is current and what we might be able to do in the future. So let's roll that, and you'll be able to see what it looks like or hear what it sounds like. All right, yeah, we're all used to that. It's to us, it's not that overwhelming anymore. It's just a regular combat system. So let's sort of look at the same thing, except now with both slow-mo and delay working, fighting enemies, having music coordinated with those hits, having sound effects aligning with those hits, and having these sort of musical accents, the cymbal crashes, the timpani drums, the percussive stuff, all aligning with hits, all because music is feeding back into the system. So let's take a look. I hope everybody enjoyed that. This is the sort of thing that gets us excited about, the future of audio. And you could probably see how this gets us a lot closer to that Indiana Jones video that we showed. Obviously, this is quite exaggerated, but you might be able to see how we could ratchet it down, ramp it back up, and build upon it to actually get these really dynamic audio systems in sort of compositions that really get us much closer to that cinematic ideal. So now that you've seen what it can do, I'll let Eric go into the technical definitions and breaking it down for you. Eric, you're muted, I think.
Sorry about that. Right. So, so let's take a look at the how we can kind of envision how the systems work under the hood here and look into, how to make this possible. At a high level, adaptive audio kind of works on like the diagram we have here on the left, where you have the player input stuff into the game engine, and the game engine sends some game information to the audio engine, and the audio is played and the mix might be adjusted based on what that information contained, and then the audio is heard. In the kind of adaptive gameplay side here that we're adding to this mix, hold on, right, yes. Sorry, one moment here. I got things all screwy. There we go, much better. We've added the top line there that goes across, and it connects the audio engine into the game engine, and that provides audio information back into the game engine. Now, what we have been kind of alluding to is that audio information isn't just, here's what's happening right now. It can be, here's what's coming up. So the audio engine can say, hey, within the next 30 seconds, you'll have, or well, that's kind of crazy, but in the next 5 seconds, here is a list of really cool things that might happen that you could do something with, and kind of keep updating the game about that. So now the game has some insight as to what's going on in the music, and the game can act accordingly. So if we then pop out to the actual methods, we can look into how this is going to work at kind of a finer grain level. This first approach here, the adaptive audio method, is how things work today without any special systems involved. None of the stuff that we've been talking about. In this case, there's a punch animation that's happening. It's triggered instantly. That's what the left side of this diagram is supposed to indicate. And it lands, and at that landing moment, the game engine will send a notification that says, hey, trigger a sound effect. That happens, unfortunately, some 150 or so milliseconds before an intense moment in the music. And that's what's indicated with the audio timeline and music intensity lines. That could be something like a beat drop or a cymbal crash or, some other swell of music. And that is unfortunately off. However, with these methods, for instance, the delay method, which is this first example here, we could, if the game engine knew about this, it can just delay that 150 milliseconds so that the total amount of time matches and the sound effect lines up with the hit, and that punch impact time lands at the same moment that we're targeting. In the slow-mo mode, effectively the same thing, except that it starts immediately and slows down the animation, or depending on your game, the entire simulation, so that all of the action is slowed down and the hit lands at the right time. At which point you could either speed things back up, go immediately back to 100% speed, whatever you want to do. That in the demo we showed, we go right back into full speed after the hit happens. The other option that we have at our disposal is a mixed kind of hybrid of the two approaches, where you can delay for a certain amount and then slow down for some amount that kind of gets you across that gap. That can be very valuable if you would need to delay beyond that like 200 millisecond maximum threshold. And for certain lower slow-mo periods, if you're slowing down by like 1 or 2%, it's potentially imperceptible. And that's some of the stuff we found with our kind of the demos we've been building and our prototypes. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what the logic around this looks like. This is Unity C# pseudocode to the point where vars are in here and none of the functions are defined. But the basic idea is we ask the audio engine about what's coming up in the mix. We say, hey, get these impact times. The animation system, we can say, hey, when is the impact time? And you could specify that in your animation with like an animation trigger or whatever, and then look that up at runtime. Then you say, okay, now that I have these two, what is the first music time, music impact time, or whatever, that happens after that kind of punch landing time, that animation time I care about. Once you have that, you can just kind of compare those with, say, the maximum delay threshold. And then depending on if it's within that threshold, you can just trigger it, delay it and schedule the animation to play back so that it would trigger in sync, or that timing would land in sync. Or you can, in Unity, adjust the time scale very simply down and just jump right into slow-mo and then hit normal play and the time will stretch out so that lands in time. This is basically what we do in those demos to kind of get this stuff all working. And it's the core algorithm is pretty straightforward right here. Some of these get a little bit squirrelier, but that's kind of implementation details that depend on which animation system are you using in Unity. There are several. So anyway, let's take a look at where this can go.
Yeah. So basically, we've seen it in like a brawling scenario, and a lot of you might be thinking like, what could I possibly do with this? I don't want to create a rhythm game, but there's a lot of valuable use to this that I think we are constrained currently in modern games by, because we're not implementing systems that are like this. One big one is VR, and in some of the issues with VR is that every time we, like as a game developer, we want a user to observe something. We have a lot of the times we option for some sort of scripted event where you lock head rotation or body movement or whatever, so that you have the person looking exactly what you're looking at or what you want them to be looking at. But we have new opportunities here. Like you can build atmosphere with music naturally, swell a score or whatever else, and then have things within the environment be reactive to that swell hit point. So if you say like you're in a haunted house or something, you're now Crash of Thunder hits in the audio, and now you can make like a vase fall off the table or something like that. We can think more creatively about how it is that we're responding to audio, which is a logical part to do something of interest, and then have that react to things within the game environment.
Slide advance.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, slide advance. There we go. That's the VR guy. The next one is stronger music compositions. Like as we showed in the Uncharted one, which actually is kind of a better example than some other games that we've heard, but still, background audio, when you give a player full agency, tends to be loops that repeat over and over again, because we have no idea what the user is going to be doing at the time. And with this sort of change in the way we think about music, we can actually start escaping from that. Of course, we're still going to need loops, but we can think about how do we adapt the audio? How does the game adapt to the audio? And how do we make more interesting scores that provide more cues for the game to do something interesting? And we kind of already talked about VR, but basically, again, in games, especially action games that are first person, we tend to, as developers, get people stuck in scripted events to handle cinematics. Top AAA games do this all the time. We don't want player agency when we have no control over when we don't want to give them control to do what we don't want them to do, or where we want them to look and everything else. This allows us to still give full agency and still have an awful lot of cinematic quality without compromising on what makes games. And the last piece here is, we kind of mentioned this earlier, but with adaptive audio and adaptive gameplay, we are actually achieving fully interactive music. We're actually getting much closer to that ideal. When it's one way, it's not fully interactive. It's kind of a one message pathway, and things react to it in the audio. But this sort of allows us to do things like game response to audio. By responding to the audio changes and adapts, and that changes the way the game is going to behave, and so on and so forth. So you can see how you can build this up, bring it back down, and create really sort of interesting new game audio opportunities in the future. So now that we know where it could go, let's what are we asking you to do?
Right. So as a real quick note, I'm not sure if it was clear, the Thomas the Tank image was intended to be a no on rails kind of thing. If you were like, what is with the train? But at any rate, so kind of, yeah, like what are we kind of asking of fellow game developers, and ourselves as included, and that is basically that we can take a fresh new approach to audio and game design, audio designs in games, and one that goes beyond kind of simple background music. We have the ability to experiment and play around with what happens when your action as a player is fully mixed and involved with the music itself, and you get that kind of sense. Now you can go all the way to Mickey Mousing, where the whole world and everything is involved and you can't break away from it. Or you could just do light touch and have kind of more of the Indiana Jones occasional punch lands on time and kind of really emphasize certain moments. It's a wide open space, and there's a lot of new area to play with. In general, this kind of old hat approach of trigger the audio, have it play in the background, and in many cases even duck the audio because it's not really relevant to the content. We can kind of rebuild that approach. We have that technology, and looking at it in that way, the compositional quality of games can not only adapt to player action, but excel in ways that musical composition in cinema can't. That basically composers will get a whole new kind of layer of interesting opportunities for composing music for games. Typically, from what we've heard with speaking with some composers in the games industry, is that they're asked, can you create music? We need it to feel like this, and that's about it. Whereas in movies, in cinema, it's very much a direct. They have the film sitting in front of them, and they literally compose to the moment of what's going on. And apparently, some directors will say, "I want this to line up everywhere it can," and some directors are like, "I want no sync." But that's a directorial call. In this case, it can be all of that and more by being more dynamic and interactive with the player. And we think that there's some potential and really exciting stuff, open to all of us in this space. And finally, rethinking game audio can kind of open up new ways to innovate in just basic audio design and create even more engaging experiences for players. Hopefully, everyone here and ourselves included will be able to take these kind of ideas and really show the world what's possible. All right, I think that basically wraps it up for us. I'm not sure what the question stuff is here, but before we get into potential questions, I just want a quick thank you to everybody. And Justin, do you want to run us out?
Yeah. Just basically, we have the playtest demo that we just showed you. Honestly, you have to feel it and play it to actually get a lot of it out. Get a lot out of it. So if you want to take a look at it, you want to give us your feedback, anything like that, you can contact us at contact@sonicbloom.io. I'm sure some of you have our personal email addresses or company email address, so you can reach out there as well. We have our own choreographer Discord server where we talk game audio. We also have support for the tool that we've developed. But if you want to jump on there and check it out, just capture this and join us there. Also, we're on Twitch every Thursday to talk about game audio and game news, including this Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And then if you're so curious as to what we've done before, we have choreographer on the Unity Asset Store if you want to play with that and check it out. Yep. So one quick call out, the demo that we were showing here, the art in that scene, we're not the artists. We actually worked with Kreth Carter, who I believe is watching this stream, to get that in. I just want to shout out to Kreth and say thanks again. Yep, thank you. All right, I'm going to stop share. So if you want to capture any of this, use your phone. All right.
We'll also have that available after the show. You can just watch the clip on demand from the presentation. Let's go back to viewing everybody. That's better.
There we go.
Great talk, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Yeah. Do we have any questions from the audience? Please type your questions into chat if you have lots of questions to ask. We did get slightly diverted by trying to calculate the value in today's money of the $6 million man.
I literally asked that same question when we were building the slide.
Well, Kreth came up with the answer that it's apparently $35 million or 595.88 Bitcoin in today's money. Awesome.
There is a question.
Yes. Rulos asks, I've been interested in implementing traditional adaptive audio in my current game, but this sort of reactive approach is intriguing. However, it seems to pose one huge problem. Have you considered its application to online competitive games? It would seem like you can't go as hard with these effects. I think that's a good point.
It is very true. That is a huge limitation. We focused our talk on single player experiences because that's the unrestricted case. There are ways to make it work in, or elements of this to work in multiplayer scenarios, right? You can have, right now, no one does any synchronization between music playing on the two remote players' computers. However, you could have a situation where, like in a replay, where someone does a kill shot, and it's assuming something like Call of Duty, and they have the camera that follows the bullet and that lands. Like, you could do things like that where all of those moments really line up. There have been games, I think Harmonix played around with some of these ideas with things like games like Chroma, where you have multiplayer games that do things with music sync. I haven't played that game, at least in release. As far as it made it, I don't know.
I don't think it was released. It was an
and
alpha, and I loved it, and they cancelled it.
Right. And because I don't think it was getting the traction that they were hoping for as the early game. But I think that some of what they were doing there was basically the sync would be local, and to other players it would just show up as bullets coming in. And there are ways to do that there. It entirely depends on your game's design and what type of multiplayer experience you're looking for. Are you playing with multiplayer combat, or kind of more of the kind of a more social sim that you're building? There might be different opportunities there that work out better.
And I should add to that, which I think sort of belongs to this question, but there are certain game types where it's just like, it just won't work as well. Online play is one of those. A competitive online, you have to deal with like split-second timing, and you can't really hold animations because it just won't feel good. It won't be predictable by the users, and that may not be an appropriate place. Other games like, say, Smash Brothers, it's like that's a type of game that you give input and it reacts to it. And like people who are competitive fighters are very, very sensitive to like frame timing. So if you're just arbitrarily delaying it for music, it's going to be a problem. But there's so many other games that don't need that sort of timing where this is appropriate. Including things like fatalities, which you input a combination and then it just plays an animation afterwards.
Right. And that, by the way, Killer Instinct for the Xbox One does that with their Ultra combos. They built a system where they actually animated to the theme songs so that when you play, the music jumps into a leitmotif for the character whose combo you're doing that matches with the music in the level that you're in, and it triggers kind of a melody line that matches your character's leitmotif as they're doing their own ultra combo through all of this and landing hits in time with the music. It's part of what makes that ultra combo so rewarding and so awesome, but it's also restricted. It's not something that can be broken. So it's fixed. Awesome. Good question.
Yeah, that was a good one. We have a question from Keyvault. Have you guys seen or played the games Rez or Fury? And if so, what would you say about their music systems?
We've played Rez. I'm not sure about Fury.
Fury.
I don't think I have. I'm going to look it up over here real quick. Justin, do you want to speak to Rez at all?
Yeah, I can talk about Rez and Mizuguchi in general, who, obviously he has music as like a core piece of all the games he makes, I think. Rez is interesting, but Rez does something that works around this sort of issue that we're showing, which is when you like sort of highlight the enemies that you're going to attack, it then delays as much as it needs to have each one land on beat. It's sort of untied to like the sort of second combat, and you get used to the fact that there's a built-in kind of long delay to get everything to sync up. It makes for a really cool experience because you're getting this sort of dynamic composition of the music as you're playing the game. but it's not a responsive game. It's like there's always this long delay between when you let go of your reticle and it fires out the little missiles that land on the enemy targets. But I don't know. It's a cool game. I like it. And it's free on PlayStation right now. So if you got a PS4, download it.
Nice.
Yeah. Eric, how's it with Fury over there?
Yeah, my laptop is struggling with all of the stuff happening right now, so I'm gonna lift it up a little bit. Can you hear me, or am I glitching?
You're okay.
You're choppy.
A couple of drop frames, but we're okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hopefully it'll cool down and return to normal. But basically, I think that I just checked out at Fury or Furry or whatever it is, FURI, by the way, and it definitely, from what I could see in the video, because it's a trailer, I wasn't able to watch gameplay, but it does look like they're doing something similar to what we're describing, and it may be a little bit less anticipatory, but more of a rhythm, like turning a music, the level in the music into kind of a timesheet for enemy attacks and that kind of thing. So you can kind of play and get a sense of that rhythm feel. That's definitely kind of something that's doable with the approach we're talking about here, but we're kind of more focused on how to make, a cinematic experience rather than more of a rhythm one. Though I would say that I would be very interested to play a game where your combat is automatically made into part of the rhythm and like it adds to the line of an attack. But that's a personal thing. Clearly, we're fans of music games, including, Rez and all the other stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Do we have any more questions? Feel free to type them in if we do. We do actually have 2 copies of JetBrains licenses to give away for Ryder, the amazing editor for using with Unity, which we can give away in a moment. We do have another question. Breery42069, do you have any thoughts about how longer sections and passages of music could be synchronized more with gameplay as opposed to beats or specific hits?
Yeah, I personally, well, it entirely depends on the game, to an extent, what type of game. If we're talking about, just combat, right? There are ways that you could have different longer segments rather than kind of an instantaneous stinger, let's say. Have a phrase or two that would trigger where if you happen to hit, if the player hits an attack at the right time, it could trigger a special move that is rewarded by having a multi-step approach where you're kind of suddenly there's multiple attacks triggered by one input or something like that, or you give the opportunity to do this hybrid of there's a slow motion, and if the player is able to hit another button at the right time within a small window, you can continue that into the next, going kind of walking the player through that longer section, and allowing them to kind of give them multiple synchronization points, maybe upping bonuses based on that, and give them that moment of, man, you did such a great job of hitting the timing on all of that, that not only are you crushing it in the combat, but we're going to give you this reward of making everything sync up, and even at the end of all that, maybe launching another kind of layer that plays out for a phrase or two in the audio, or a bar or two before kind of falling back to the bass music or whatever. There's transition options. It really depends on what would it be? The composer and the game designers and level designers are looking for, I think. Justin, do you have
also
thoughts?
add that there's like a whole other aspect of this, which is, like more in, I guess, like environmental music or like mood setting type music that you'll find in a lot of games now. They're still at least very plain, but let's take a game like Ghost of Tsushima, where we're starting to talk about like particle simulations, weather effect simulations, day-night simulations, all these things that we have at our disposal now, especially with modern game engines. And if you have a type of like ambient music track that has different changes in it and whatnot, like you can think about it not directly impacting gameplay, but impacting the world around you. You could see something like where you get like a flute trill and like a Ghost of Tsushima, and then suddenly a gust of wind comes through and blows through leaves. There's things like that are absolutely possible. And it doesn't have to be really heavy-handed. It could just be sometimes coincidental or feel like it's coincidental, but maybe over the long play period, you start realizing, hey, there's something here, and they're using music effect to enhance the environment and the sort of feel. Those are all very possible.
Yeah, part of the reason that this doesn't exist yet is because audio engines tend to be one way by implementation, right? And then Wise and Fmod kind of, their opportunities for getting information out of the audio engine are extremely limited. We've dug into it and looked into it and had to strong arm them to open up some pathways for our choreographer stuff when we're trying to integrate. And it's been amazing to see just how little they want you mucking around in the system, and how little they want you to know like what's playing and where it is. They just don't. No one has really been thinking about that, and we think that that's an opportunity there for opening up stuff. If you know what's going on in the music, you do stuff with it and make cool stuff. It's kind of that's a really high level look at and summation of what we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's our whole pitch. If you know music, you can do cool stuff.
There's another question which you sort of touched upon before, but by Deathclaw Wizard. Do you think implementing these systems might come to the detriment of players, causing them not to enjoy the game?
Yeah, I have sorry, do you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead. I have.
I mean, I think there's a general principle with games, which is you have to be predictable to a user. Like a user has to be able to do something and expect an outcome in games. So if you have a game engine that is based entirely on music, and the music's hard to follow or unknown at the time, and all the effects, the inputs, and all this other stuff are being driven by the music, it could be extremely frustrating situation. But this is sort of like why we focus on like these minor movements of animation that are generally imperceptible. Presuming it's like not a timing sensitive game, which, as we kind of mentioned, a lot of adventure games, modern adventure, story-driven or narrative games aren't really timing specific because they tend to focus on long transition animations that when your input goes in, you're seeing the effect later. So, we like to focus there where it's like there is a room to move around the effect of an input, and it's not unexpected by a player or a user. And there's definitely areas where if you went too heavy-handed and made it unpredictable because it's being driven by the music and input does not correlate to a reaction, that's why I think you get into trouble.
Right. And I think there are a few traps that you can fall into. One of which is suddenly thinking of it as like, let's make a rhythm game where you reward the player for hitting on the beat. And now you are asking more of the player than perhaps the game, and that's going to change the game rather than just kind of bring about that cinematic feel. And that's kind of what we're trying to steer clear of, that kind of conversation. Certainly, we love rhythm games; it's kind of been our background, but we think that this can be applied well beyond that. I think at the end of the day, whether what you've done with this approach is a detriment to the player should really play through in play testing. So it would be, here is a prototype, or here's an early version of what I'm building. You play it, and does it feel good to you? Oh no, that's too much, or that's too little. You're onto something, and we've experienced this when we have the settings like so low that we're like, is this a bug? Is anything actually happening? Like, is it delaying at all? A lot of the times we'll throw up that UI where we showed to just see like, okay, it does seem to be registering. Okay, that's fine then. And that's why we were like, there are definitely settings where it's just basically imperceptible. But yeah, it is a very big and very good concern. It's good to call out that this has the potential to break the experience. You wouldn't there's no way that you would put something like this directly into the combat system for, say, Street Fighter. that would not go well with the players. Oh, I would also suggest that if you do go with the rhythm game thing, doing that in a combat system where the combat is already, complex, and you're asking someone to time as well, you're asking them to know the music. It could be as, without giving them the feedback of saying, here's what's coming. Guitar Hero and Rock Band and those types of games all have that information on screen. And you can see on hard mode, it's just everything is streaming at you at once, and you have to build up to that. Doing a rhythm game in combat without showing some kind of UI to the user and say, here's what's coming, like here's how you anticipate what's coming, is a nightmare, because no one is gonna, you'd have to play the game and fail so many times before you understood what was coming and how the music was changing based on where the combat is. It would be ridiculous. It's not to say that someone couldn't figure it out. I just don't know how to do it.
When you were talking before about like VR, it kind of piqued my interest in a way. I've been working a lot with Unity and VR experiences that are more cinematic in general.
Mm-hmm.
So they're VR films that are like at Sundance and things like that. And I feel like this would be kind of perfect because there's a little bit of user agency, even though things are pretty much scripted.
Yeah.
But I could see this like being like you're not relying on someone going through and lining everything up precisely, constantly all the audio and actions, on how like it would really sort of flavor the user's experience when they do something and like audio happens at the right exact moment and be really rewarding. I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah, that's kind of our intuition as well. What you just described is exactly the kind of image where you might throw a ball out into the space and then it kind of, whatever it's going to do, it'll do, but it can be slightly nudged so that it does it in time with the music and it feels like it's part of this world that you, what you've done is interact with this this world that's already doing something and you've become a part of it. Yeah.
Very interesting stuff.
Awesome.
Great.
All right.
Questions?
I think we've run out of questions for now. We do have a question for the audience, though, right? We have 2 copies of JetBrains Rider to give away. Eric, you came up with a good question to ask the audience. What we would like to do is Eric will ask the question, and the first 2 people to answer correctly in chat will win copies of Rider. So, what was the question,
all right.
Eric?
So the question is, what is the audio engine that powers Unity's audio?
That's a good question. Let's see if any of them
Can't see the responses, but I'm curious how quickly that will fire it off.
Yep.
I'm in awe of all this sort of making the animation sync up with the music thing. I've spent like a fair bit of today trying to make some particle effects sync up with just a sound effect and an animation at the same time. And the 3 of these are like... No, let's go old school. Ad-lib. PC speaker. I'm inclined to give you one just because that's a brilliant answer.
And to be fair, I didn't actually realize the answer to this question until maybe a month ago myself.
Yeah. It's one of those things that you may not realize until you see an odd error in the console. You're like, what?
Yeah.
I didn't have that installed.
Let's have. Okay, well, we will take wrong answers. Bree, I think you can have a license for that answer. That is a fabulous answer, and you made us all laugh. So thank you. SDL says the real Chadius.
Should open this up and see what people are saying.
Yeah, I haven't heard of SDL. I have to say. OpenAL says
that was brought up. Someone mentioned that in this group too to start.
It was worth a shot.
I can give a hint. It's not wise.
That's a good hint.
Yep.
Hey, we got one. CBG plays Fmod.
It is Fmod. To give a little bit of some background on that, it's Fmod low level, which wasn't, this is back in like the mid 2000s or whatever, the aughts, I guess. Is that what it is? I don't know the versus the 10s. When Unity was first built, Fmod was broken into Fmod EX and Fmod low level or Fmod LL. And Fmod low level they gave away for free. And anyone could integrate it, but you had to build your own kind of music playback and audio playback system, which they did. It's the audio source system. And Unity built that on that. And then Fmod sold Fmod EX, which was the application and interface. Today, that's called the Fmod Core API. I'm not sure if they still give it away. And then Fmod Studio. So if you are installing and using Fmod Studio, you are not using Unity Audio and the old Fmod low level. You turn that off and it's disabled and pulled out of the engine. And you're using Fmod Studio and Fmod Core API, the latest stuff. So they don't mix. But it is like a piece of trivia that at the core of Unity, even today, they have Fmod working behind the scenes. Except I think in the WebGL builds, those are a custom thing, and also their new audio DSP stuff.
I'm having trouble coordinating all the keyboards and all the buttons tonight, but for Bree and for CBG, please message message the D Strawberry Girl account, and I can email you. We can get you the licenses emailed to you. So please send me your email address. You can also message us on the meetup if you can't get us on Twitch, and we'll send you the licenses. Congratulations. Alrighty.
Jealous.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. We have them every month. You have to come back next month.
I think so.
Yeah, and you have to answer the question correctly, whatever the question will be. We'll come up with a really devious one just for you, Eric.
I love it. I'll be ready. I'm gonna bone up on my Unity stuff.
Awesome stuff. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming this evening. Thank you very much to Justin and Eric for a fantastic talk. And we will be back next month for our next talk, of which I have forgotten. It's April.
It's something to do with Connecticut.
Oh yes, it was Connecticut. Yes, we've been chatting with some folks in Connecticut about a talk, so we will post details about it soon. But we will be back last Wednesday of the month again, and take care, everybody. See you next time.
Stay safe. Be well.
Thanks a lot.